If you've listened to this show or our YouTube channel, you've heard me build out three frameworks: the retirement tax stack, the three phases of retirement income, the Roth conversion corridor, the window of empty tax brackets between retirement and RMDs, and the Social Security timing decision. When to turn on the benefit and why delay usually wins for households like yours. Three frameworks, and all three build toward the same destination, what we call here at NAV Wealth the pseudo-Roth strategy. And if you have a pension, you're about to find out that the pseudo-Roth is the framework your pension hits the hardest. Stick around for segment 2 to find out just what we're talking about. Because every one of those frameworks is true, and every one of them was built with a quiet assumption baked in, that when you retire, your income drops to nearly zero, and you control every dollar of taxable income you create. If you have a pension, that assumption is false on day one of retirement. So today's episode is the asterisk. If you're retiring with a pension, corporate, government, military, union, you name it, this episode is how you revise everything you've heard on this show. Not throw it out, just revise it, because a pension is a genuinely great thing to have. It's guaranteed income you can't outlive. But it changes the tax math in three specific ways. And if you run the standard playbook without adjusting for it, you'll leave real money on the table. We're going to cover three revisions. 1, what a pension does to the retirement tax stack. 2, how it shrinks and sometimes collapses your Roth conversion corridor. And 3, how it flips parts of your Social Security decision. I'm Ryan Knoll, this is the bracket, and this one's for the pension households. Let's get into it. Quick refresher on the framework, because everything today builds on it. In the tax stack episode, I laid out three phases of a retirement income plan. Phase 1, you've retired, Social Security hasn't started, RMDs are years away, your taxable income is close to zero, and every dollar of income you show the IRS is a dollar you chose to show them. That's maximum flexibility. Phase 2, Social Security turns on and your flexibility will narrow. Finally, Phase 3, RMDs begin and the IRS starts choosing your income for you. Flexibility now is nearly gone. The whole strategy of that episode was rather simple. You use the flexibility of phases 1 and 2 to shrink the tax zone of phase 3. Here's revision number 1. If you have a pension, you never experience phase 1, at least not really. The day your pension starts, you have a permanent income floor. It arrives every month, whether you want it to or not, and with narrow exceptions for the after-tax contributions, every dollar of it is ordinary income. You can't defer it, you can't harvest around it, you can't turn it off in a year when you'd rather show the IRS nothing. So while your neighbor without a pension retires into empty brackets, zero income, a blank canvas per se, you retire into brackets that are already partially filled. Say your pension is somewhere in the $75,000 to $90,000 range, which is very common for the households that we work with. After the standard deduction, you're not starting at the bottom of the 10% bracket, you're starting your planning from the middle of the stack. Every additional dollar you create, an IRA withdrawal, a Roth conversion, a capital gain, lands on top of your pension, not in the empty space beneath it. In tax stack language, a pension means you skip phase 1 entirely and retire direct to something that looks like phase 2. And when Social Security and RMDs eventually arrive, they stack on top of the pension, which means your phase 3 is taller than the phase 3 of a household with the same portfolio and no pension. Now I want to be very clear about the framing here, because I said it in our pension video and I'll say it again. This is not a problem. A pension is an asset most people would trade a lot to have. A pension household needs less from their portfolio, can take risk on their own terms, and has longevity insurance built into their plan. The pension isn't the problem. The problem is running a no pension playbook for a pension household. That's the mistake, and it's the single most common one we see when pension households come to us with a plan they built themselves or got from generic advice. One more layer here, and this one is specific to the households this episode is for. $2 to $5 million in investable assets spread across brokerage accounts, traditional IRAs, and hopefully some Roths. Here's the compounding effect. Because the pension covers most or all of your lifestyle, your portfolio barely gets touched, or at least not as much as your non-pension counterparts, which sounds great, and it is, but it means your traditional IRA keeps compounding untouched toward the RMD years, and your brokerage account keeps throwing off dividends and interest that you don't need and can't turn off. Both of those stack on top of the pension floor too. The household that doesn't need the portfolio is often the household building the biggest phase 3 problem, silently, while feeling zero pain today. So that's revision 1. The pension raises the floor of the entire stack, permanently, starting day 1. Hold that image in your head because the raised floor, it drives everything in the next segment. Framework number 2, the Roth conversion corridor. If you're new here, this is the short version. Between retirement and required minimum distributions, most households have a stretch of low-income years where the lower tax brackets sit empty. Empty tax brackets are an asset. You fill them deliberately with Roth conversions, moving money from your traditional IRA to your Roth, paying tax now at low rates, so that money will never be taxed again. Not at RMD time, not for your surviving spouse, and not for your kids when they inherit it. The size of the corridor is simple math. It's the top of your target bracket minus the income you already have. And there's the collision. A pension pre-fills this corridor. That's $75,000 to $90,000 of pension income. That was your cheapest conversion space. The bottom brackets your neighbor gets to fill with conversions at 10 and 12%. Your pension's already occupying them. Your conversions don't start at the bottom of the stack. They start where the pension ends, which for most of our pension households means the first conversion dollar is already in the top of the 12% bracket and possibly even the 22% bracket. And the meaningful question becomes how far into the 22 or 24% bracket you're willing to go and whether or not it's still worth it. Often it still is, and I'll come back to why, but 3 specific consequences follow, and this is the heart of today's episode. Consequence number 1, your corridor is smaller, so every year of it matters more. A no pension household might have room to convert well into 6 figures per year at reasonable rates. A pension household, on the other hand, targeting the same bracket ceiling, might have half the space or less. You can't make the corridor wider, but you can make sure you use it every year, which means pension households have less margin for the we'll get to it eventually approach. If your corridor is half the size, procrastination will cost you double. Consequence number 2, the corridor collision I talked about in the tier list episode on my YouTube channel gets worse, much worse. Remember the collision. Roth conversions and 0% capital gains harvesting draw from the same bucket of taxable income headroom. For a no pension household, splitting that corridor between the 2 strategies is the sophisticated move. For a pension household, the 0% long-term capital gains bracket may simply be gone. The pension alone can push your taxable income past the 0% threshold before you've harvested a single gain. So a strategy I ranked A tier for the general audience can be flatly unavailable to you. And if you've got a large brokerage account with big unrealized gains, that changes your entire drawdown and asset location plan. That's not a small footnote, that's a different playbook. Consequence number 3, and this is the one that makes the math still work. The pension raises your future rate too. Here's what people miss. They look at converting at 22 or 24% and say, that's expensive, I'll pass. But the comparison isn't your conversion rate versus 0. It's your conversion rate versus the rate your money gets taxed at later, when RMDs on an untouched $2 or $3 million IRA stack on top of the pension, on top of Social Security, and on top of dividends and capital gains distributions inside of your brokerage account. For a pension household, that future stack is taller, and it's a killer. The pension that makes conversions more expensive today is the same pension that makes not converting more expensive tomorrow. And then there's the survivor scenario. One spouse passes, The survivor keeps most of the income. There's a pension survivor benefit in most cases, the larger Social Security check remains, and you have the same required distributions, but filing at a single tax rate within compressed brackets. The widow's penalty is what that's called, and it's real for everyone. For a pension household, it's amplified because the income floor doesn't die with the first spouse. So the honest summary of segment 2 here, the pension shrinks the corridor and raises the stakes of using it. Smaller window, bigger consequence, which is why pension households, more than anyone, need this modeled, not eyeballed. The bracket by bracket, year by year answer to how much do we convert and do we harvest gains at all is genuinely different for every pension household because it depends on the pension size, the start date, the survivor election you choose, and the shape of the IRA. One practical note now before we move on, specific to the $2 to $5 million household, where the conversion tax gets paid from matters more for you. Paying the conversion tax from the brokerage account or cash, rather than withholding it from the conversion itself, means the full converted amount lands in the Roth. And since your brokerage is throwing off income you don't need anyways, spending it down to fund conversion taxes quietly solves two problems at once. It maximizes the conversion and it shrinks the taxable drag stacking on your pension every single year. That's the kind of coordination move that never shows up in a rule of thumb. Now, framework number 3, Social Security timing. The standard guidance you've heard from me for healthy, affluent households, delaying to 70 usually wins. The benefit grows roughly 8% for every year you wait past full retirement age, and it's inflation adjusted. And the bigger check becomes the survivor benefit for whichever spouse lives the longest. Does a pension change that? Yes, in 3 ways, and interestingly, they don't all point in the same direction. First, the tax torpedo mostly stops mattering because you've already been hit. For middle-income retirees, there's a nasty zone where each extra dollar of income drags more of their Social Security into taxation. That's the torpedo. Planning around it is a real strategy for some households, not for you. With a pension of any meaningful size, your provisional income is high enough that the maximum share of your Social Security, under current law 85% of it, is going to be taxable no matter what you do. That's the bad news. The good news is it's clarifying. You can stop trying to finesse Social Security taxability and make the timing decision on cleaner grounds: longevity, survivor math, and corridor strategy. Second, delay does double duty for a pension household. Here's the underrated part. Every year you delay Social Security isn't just growing the benefit. It's keeping one more income layer off your stack during the remaining corridor years. Your corridor is already compressed by the pension. Turning on Social Security at 62 or 65 stacks a second permanent income stream on top of the pension and shrinks the corridor again, right in the years you need that space for conversions. Delaying to 70 protects what's left of the window. For a no pension household, delay is mostly a longevity bet. For a pension household, delay is a longevity bet and a tax planning move. The case for 70 gets stronger, not weaker. And notice, you're uniquely positioned to delay. The usual objection of waiting is, I need income. You don't. The pension typically covers your floor. The household that benefits most from delaying is also the household best equipped to afford it. Use that to your advantage. Third, the survivor math has to be run as one system, not two. You made or will make a pension survivor election, single life or joint survivor at some percentage, whatever it may be. And Social Security also has its own survivor rules. The surviving spouse keeps the larger of the two checks. Those two decisions interact, and I see them made in separate rooms all the time. If you took a reduced survivor percentage on the pension, the surviving spouse's income floor drops at the first death, which makes the delayed maximized Social Security benefit more important as the backstop. If you took the full and joint survivor election, the survivor's floor stays high at single filing rates, remember, and the conversion urgency from segment 2 goes up another notch. Either way, pension election, Social Security timing, and conversion plans are one decision with 3 levers. Pull them separately and they're going to fight one another. One-click flag for the government and public sector pension folks. The rules that used to reduce Social Security for some pension recipients, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, were repealed recently. If you were told years ago that your Social Security would be slashed because of your pension, that guidance may be stale. Have it rerun under current law before making a decision based on old math. Let's put the 3 revisions together into the order of operations for a pension household with $2 to $5 million spread across brokerage, traditional, and Roth. Start with your floor. Know your pension start date, its survivor election, and its exact annual amount when you're both living and deceased, because that number is the foundation for every other decision that it sits on. If the start date is flexible and you can bridge the gap from cash or brokerage, deferring the pension can buy you a genuinely empty brackets for a few years. Those years are worth a fortune. Most people never even ask that question. Then map the corridor honestly. Top of your target bracket minus the pension, minus the portfolio income you can't turn off, that's your real annual conversion capacity. It's smaller than the generic guidance assumes, which means the plan has to start earlier and run tighter. Then make the Social Security call inside that map. Knowing that delay protects corridor space, that taxability is a settled question, and the survivor decision has to be coordinated with the pension election you already made. And run the whole thing to the second death, not the first. The widow's penalty is where pension planning is won or lost, because the pension income floor survives into single filing status. Any plan that stops at our joint life expectancy is half a plan. That's the revised playbook, some frameworks you already know from the show with a 4 that's been adjusted. Here's the through line. A pension doesn't break the frameworks, it just reprices them. The tax stack starts higher, the corridor is smaller and more valuable per year, and the Social Security delay quietly becomes a tax strategy, not just a longevity bet. Which means if you have a pension, generic retirement advice, including the generic version of my advice, isn't calibrated for you. The strategies are the same, the sizing, the sequence, and the urgency, though, those are different. If you're retiring with a pension and a $2 to $5 million portfolio, this is exactly the planning the advisors at NAV Wealth do every day. Modeling the pension floor, the compressed corridor, the Social Security timing, and the survivor math is one coordinated plan. The link to book a conversation with a NAV Wealth advisor is in the show notes below. And just a quick disclaimer, everything in this episode is educational, not individualized tax, legal, or investment advice. Tax figures referenced are as of the current tax year and do change. Verify that against current law or talk with a professional before acting. That's the Asterisk. I'm Ryan Knoll. This has been The Bracket, and I'll see you in the next episode.